What's going on, people? My name is Kwame Saframenta, and I'm rocking with McGriff today.
The block hot, the block hot, the block hot, the block hot.
So this is actually one of my favorite lines from the book, and it's all focused on this idea of cultural responsiveness. Not just in education, but just really in life, why it's important. Cultural competence is a necessary skill to have in order to build healthy relationships with other human beings. In the context of urban education, there is no way that a teacher can effectively create a structured classroom learning environment without mastering this skill. Just to be clear, cultural competency is not just applicable to relationships between Black people and white people. It is a required skill to have when people from different parts of the African diaspora interact with one another. This can also be said about Asian, Latin American, Native American, and all other cultures. This is an anecdotal guide for anybody who's looking to shape the teacher identity during their first couple years in the classroom. I'm a Boston Public Schools teacher and an author, as you can see, and I've been teaching for the past 9 years, both in Boston and Philadelphia, primarily in urban school settings. All right, that's it right here?
You put it where it goes.
You just kind of did it mentally? It's really not that obvious because if you actually solve it out, it should be 3 terms. You're missing a term. You have to solve it out. I think it's personal. This work is personal to me because as a Black man in America, we are the most marginalized, arguably, and probably the most underrepresented group of people in the country. So every day is a fight. I'm in my 9th year teaching, and there's still people who look at me and they still can't believe that I'm a teacher. So that's one aspect of it. But then the other aspect is just the fact that so many of our kids come from either impoverished situations or they just come in with a lot of trauma, whether it be emotional, mental, physical, what have you. And that impacts their ability to focus in school to the point where school becomes secondary because they have to deal with the fact that, they have family members that are in jail. They have to be the person who picks up their sisters and brothers from school and brings them to school before they can get to class, and that causes them to be late. We don't really talk about those issues. You're good.
I'm good too. I did it mentally. See, like these parts, I did it mentally.
All right, turn over now.
It's not even difficult to do it.
All right, man.
You can do it by a pattern.
Yeah, it depends. Some of them, like,
Procrastinating yesterday.
he was procrastinating. So when did you actually start the work? Like what time?
Somewhere around 5:30.
5:30? It's still,
The second I got home, I was like,
See, you're like me. I was the type where as soon as I got home, that was the first thing I did. Let me get out the way so I have the rest of the day to myself.
Monday I didn't get home until 5.
What did you do right after school? I always like to say that humble beginnings give birth to intrinsic motivation. So what I mean by that is when you come from a situation where you're struggling, when you come from a situation of hardship, a situation of great sacrifice, where in this case, you might be sacrificing your youth to do adult things for the betterment of your family. As you get older, you learn to appreciate the value of hard work, the value of perseverance, because you understand the amount of work it takes to get what you want. So I think from an affirmative aspect, it can be a positive, but in the present, if you're someone that has to carry that burden for your family, that's going to have an impact on what you do academically because the pressure can be overwhelming. And if you don't have the right mindset, if you don't have the right build to carry on that burden, you could easily crumble, and that could backfire on you. So I think it can work out both ways. All right, Scarlett, you all set? Yeah, like, come on now. Y'all was killing it the other day.
Okay, I'm gonna do you an easy one real quick.
All right. Well, I think for me, both my parents are Ghanaian, so they migrated from Ghana, West Africa, and came to the States in the late 60s. My father came for school. He attended Western New England University and got his MBA there. My mother was at Westfield State College for a couple years studying nursing, but then she had to drop out to take care of my older brother. And 5 years later, she had me. And then from there, it was really hard for her to get back to school and finish her degree. So she never got the opportunity to do that. But she was always somebody who was teaching and mentoring kids. So I honestly believe that I get that from her, as well as my temperament. But I'll be honest when I say that I didn't grow up like a lot of kids I teach. I came from a 2-parent household. Both my parents were college educated. And we always knew that when we finished high school, college would be the next step up. We didn't know anything about alternative programs. We weren't exposed to that because the expectation was always go to college. That's all we knew. And it got to a point where we thought, well, everybody goes to college after high school. We didn't realize that some people never get the opportunity to go to college because that's not what we were exposed to at that age. But man, you notice how, some of the students, they just kind of look like they didn't care. Well, it's easy to not care when you already know that you're going to be moving on to the next grade. And that's more of a systemic thing. I can't even blame the kids. You can blame them, but it's not all them. It's just a way for the status quo to perpetuate a system that has kept and marginalized Black and brown children for many generations. So if they see that they're being able to move on to the next grade without having to prove their academic worth, without having to get the grades, what makes you think that they're going to work hard to get the grades that they need to be promoted if they're already being allowed to go? So unless you have that intrinsic mindset, unless you have that self-worth that just tells you, hey, you're better than this, you're better than this D, you're better than this F, you're going to be complicit to the current system structures that are in place to keep us at a subordinate level. And that's the truth. I don't know, for me, you can eyeball it, but I think it's helpful when you rotate.
Yeah.
I rotated 90 degrees clockwise, so it'll look like this for y'all, like this. Clockwise meaning, think of a clock, right? You're at the 12, 90 degrees is at the 3. That's 90 degrees clockwise. So, right? So if you leave your paper like this, you'll see that the angles kind of correspond with each other, right? So in this case, I had to break it down in parts. My first 4 years, I was actually a special education student. So for those who are in the education field, you know about IEPs and 504 plans. I was that student with an IEP from grades 1 to 4. My diagnosis was around expressive speech. Ironic, right? I I had a hard time articulating myself verbally. So what I would do is resort to drawing pictures as a way to avoid having to speak with people face to face. And then, so that part caused me to be in a self-contained classroom setting my first 4 years. But then there was a social aspect of it where you're a special education student, everybody's teasing you because you ride the short bus, or you're in the same room as people who have other intellectual or other learning disabilities like autism. There were students who had Asperger's. You had students who had Down syndrome, more severe disabilities. But when you're in that room, everybody's the same. I think after a while, you just tell yourself enough is enough. But you also want to surround yourself with people who actually see you as someone of value. So after my 6th grade year, I actually moved to Ghana with my father and younger sister. And I tell you, it was the first time that I felt like I figured out who I was as a person, because you're going to your country. I grew up in this country, in the United States. I had been to Ghana just to visit family members, but to live there and to go to school out there and to actually see people who look like you in terms of complexion and just the physical features, that was a first for me, because when you're in this country, you're the outlier, because how many people have a West African name, no English name? How many people have this dark complexion? Not too many people, so you stand out. And that's enough for people to, say Africa jokes at you and do all kinds of things to make you feel like you're less than. And the more you hear it, the more you internalize it. So when I got to Ghana and I saw that people looked like me, had the same hair as me, same facial features as me, same build as me physically, and were of the same culture, ate the same food, that's when I realized, being Ghanaian's dope. I actually have an appreciation for my culture. And I think spending those 3 years there was a turning point for me, because when I got back to the States for high school, I was a different dude. I was feeling myself. I was promoting my culture. I was wearing the flag with pride, and my self-confidence, my self-worth were at an ultimate high. And that was all because of the years I spent in Ghana, because for the first time, I actually saw who I was. I actually felt like I was somebody and not the butt of somebody's jokes.
That's great.
Yeah. Shaping the Teacher Identity. And I wrote this book because I think for me it was therapeutic. It was a way for me to channel my thoughts on paper, but also to really chronicle my journey as an educator from my early years as a child, which we talked about earlier, to where I am now. And this was a book that I wish I had when I was a teacher during my first couple years, because I didn't have a mentor. I didn't have someone coming to me saying, hey, check this lesson plan out. Your objectives aren't measurable, or you need to think more deeply about the learning outcomes your kids are going to get from this lesson. I didn't have anybody give me that kind of mentorship. So a lot of what I learned was through trial and error, making mistakes, kind of being alone in that situation and not having anybody there to keep you afloat. And I think it was through that I started to build my strength, because when you're forced to do things independently without the guidance, I think the positive from being in that situation is, you have no choice but to be self-sufficient. You have no choice but to make mistakes and take risk and be bold. And that's basically what I had to do for the first couple years. But it turned out to be a very difficult and complicated journey, but I learned so many lessons from that. And those 8 lessons are stemmed from my personal experience, but also the experiences of other educators that I interviewed for the book. So there were about 30 educators I interviewed. In this book, I would say about 17 or 18 of them are actually featured in there. So once again, my name is Kwame Sarfo-Mensah, and I am rocking with McGriff. But before we go, I want to share some information. To get more information about my professional development services, more information about the book, and everything about me, you can check my website out. It's www.identitytalk4educators.com. www.identitytalk4educators.com. You can find me on Instagram at Quam_the_identity_shaper. Facebook at Identity Talk for Educators, and on Twitter at Identity Shaper. So check me out, holla at your boy. So this chapter is on determining your why, your purpose for doing the work that you do, and that's pretty much applicable to any profession. So it starts off like this, and in this case it's for teaching. Before you decide to pursue a career as a teacher, you have to determine your why. You need to determine your reason for wanting to pursue this important work. You can't go into the teaching profession not knowing why you don't want to do it. Your why should serve as your foundation of your identity as a teacher. It should be the main reason why you arrive at school early in the morning to make photocopies of worksheets and organize your classroom before the arrival of your students. Your why should be the reason why you spend countless hours outside a school building, creating weekly lesson plans, grading papers, and making phone calls to parents to update them on their child's academic progress. Your why should also be the reason why you have the strength and determination to keep coming back to the classroom after a rough day with the students. Your why is the fuel to your engine and the cleanse of your spirit when feelings of indifference and apathy attempt to creep into your soul. Your why is what allows your heart to remain open to your students, even when they do everything in their power to test your will.
Next on Rockin' with McGriff.
Shorty, once you dance, you dancing on me. We went through dictionaries, like everything, you name it, and I came across the word stately. It's late night, your girl just pissed you off. Put the windows down, drive like, you gotta be on a highway, you gotta do like 60, you gotta do the speed limit. I feel like the city right now, and I was actually talking to my man's Johnny Souls. This is his shop. Come here and shop.
Shorty, you don't want me. We don't do no talking. Had to see you walking. Had to see you stand.
It was like, I just knew words, and I just knew how to put them together, and then when, you know.
To the kid you knew was popping. Tell the truth, then why'd you stop it? Shorty, I just been so honest. Shorty, I could do no wrong, but you swear that I did. Swear I ain't lie, but these feelings legit.